So I study innovation, but in particular, I've become kind of known as a skeptic of disruptive or revolutionary types of innovation. I'm actually not, but I do believe that most people in most companies doing most innovation are trying to figure out how to do something better for their current customers with their current product. So what I study is how can you innovate around your product, right? Not inside the box, not doing another version that's slightly better, not outside the box, not searching for those big disruptive innovations, but around the box, surrounding your product with complementary innovations that help your customers get more value, that help them make your product more useful to your customers. Yeah, so I think the first step that companies often miss is kind of a respect for what made you great. What are those things that you did yesterday that you're going to do today, that you're going to do tomorrow? Those things that the world would miss if you were gone, that your customers count on you for. And what are those products and services? And respect those and honor those, and then innovate around them. Try and understand your customers' lives, because often, the challenges that they have are not related to the product, but maybe kind of how they find it, how they get ready to use it, or what happens afterwards. And so if you can innovate around that product to make it more compelling, more valuable, more useful, often not only do you help the sales of the product, but you find other opportunities for revenue that can help bolster that bottom line. One example I love was Sarah Robb O'Hagan came to Gatorade in 2008. And 2008, of course, was the Great Recession. And so Gatorade, as an expensive sports hydration drink, was suffering because people were substituting water for Gatorade. And also, Gatorade was owned by PepsiCo, and there is a competitor called Powerade that was owned by Coca-Cola that was also taking share. And so she came to Gatorade, and she had to turn around this brand that she thought was in decline, but was actually kind of in free fall. And what she did was she went out to try and understand her core customer, that serious athlete, high school, college, professional, those serious athletes. And what Gatorade had done to try to boost sales was it had succumbed to what Jim Collins called the disease of more. It had put out more and more flavors through more and more distribution channels. And every time they added a flavor, it increased their costs, but not their revenues. They weren't growing at all. They were just declining in profits. And so she cut out all those extra flavors because their customers didn't care about it. But when she looked at those serious athletes, what she found is that they were doing things before athletic events. They were doing carbo loading, and the great sprinter Usain Bolt was eating Skittles because he couldn't find something better. And then, of course, they were hydrating during, and then recovering after using protein shakes, protein bars, things like that. And so she broadened the brand to be not Gatorade, but the G series. And she created this 3-stage of prime, perform, recover. And when she did that, what was interesting was that sales of the drink, even though she cut the range of flavors, sales of the drink went up, as well as she was able to get those extra revenues. When I say she and her team at Gatorade was able to get the revenues from those complementary products as well. Where my research is naturally leading me towards is leadership of innovation, because the things that make you good at doing one product at a time, the policies, the reward systems, the metrics, the roles, will prevent you from developing a family of complementary innovations. And so sometimes the danger is not that your team doesn't know what to do, but the management sets up the team for failure. And so I'm trying to understand how a top management team can structure it so that their teams have a chance of succeeding at this approach to innovation. What we found is that the business model matters a great deal. That if you don't think about profits from a global perspective, if you apply that business school discipline of putting P&Ls on every innovation effort, you can kill your team. So let me give you a specific example. GoPro had 5 years of 90% growth, and they're kind of topping out of that cycle. I mean, one lesson I think we all know is that nothing lasts forever. But they had 5 years of 90% growth by applying this approach to innovation. They didn't just invent a better action camera, but they also had mounts. You can put your GoPro on anything, on your helmet, on your chest, on your dog, on your guitar. I mean, they've created mounts for everything. My favorite was a hula hoop mount that gives the hula hoop view of the person doing the hooping, whatever you call that. And they created a smartphone app to control your GoPro. They created desktop software so that you could turn the raw footage into a very cool music video. They created a social media site that will pay thousands of dollars to great videos. And they put out a best of video every year. And so they created this whole system of innovations. So Sony, of course, who has been in the video camera game much longer than GoPro and knows much more about it, they commissioned a team to make an action camera because they saw the GoPro was selling 7 times more action cameras and actually 50% more video cameras than Sony. So they commission a team, they go off and they create a better video camera. It has more pixels, it has image stabilization, it has noise reduction, things the GoPro doesn't have. It's a third cheaper, and it fails because they were developing a product, not a system. And whose fault is that? You know, I really feel for that team leader, you know, stuck somewhere in the bowels of Sony in Japan, who's given this great challenge, works like hell, actually succeeds at it, and is probably being blamed for the failure when it was absolutely the fault of the management team that set them up for failure. What I like to tell managers is that we need to be thinking about innovation as dating, not fighting. That if we think about innovation as fighting our competitors, then what we do is we watch them and we see what features and functions and characteristics their products and services have, and we try and do ours better, faster, cheaper, and everybody becomes a commodity and everybody's miserable. If instead you think about innovation as dating your customer, you know, when you met that special person in your life and you wanted to have more of a relationship with them, then you tried to understand who they were, what their dreams and hopes and fears and passions were, and then how could you connect them in more different ways? How could you become a bigger part of their life? That's the way I think we should think about innovation, as dating your customer, not fighting your competitor. And that's what I tell top managers.